My name is Eugene Grant. Thank you guys for being here. It's an honor to be here to present to you guys. This is actually my first Guilford Parent Academy presentation. I'm used to presenting to teachers, principals, curriculum facilitators. But again, it's an honor to be in your presence tonight, and thank you for coming out. We're going to be talking about what in the world is the new math. The new math. Raise your hand if you've heard that term, new math, maybe in the news or articles you've read. So we're just going to talk about that. And as Gabe said, we're not necessarily going to get into the weeds of specific math content necessarily, but I do want to make sure before you leave here tonight, you have a better understanding of what your child is learning in middle school. And hopefully by the time you leave here, you have a better understanding of that. I actually started teaching in 2006 at Southeast Guilford High School. Any Southeast Guilford alum? Southeast Guilford Middle, high school people, okay, not too many of you. But I actually started teaching there in 2006, high school math all the way up into 2014. As Gabe said, I was awarded the Teacher of the Year 2013-14, and in June of 2014, I got a promotion to central office where I became a math coordinator. I've done it all within 4 years, K-12, in terms of dealing with math curriculum, coaching teachers, coaching CFs, in my current role as math supervisor. So I have a pretty broad span of knowledge when it comes to math, and again, continuing to learn every day. So this is our Guilford County Schools mission. We like to put that in front of you guys. Raise your hand if you've never seen this mission before. Never seen this mission. Okay, I'll give you a few seconds to read it. Guilford County students will graduate as responsible citizens prepared to succeed in higher education or in the career of their choice. So again, that's our mission and our vision and our goal here at Guilford County Schools. Here's the overview. Just 3 things that I want to cover in my time with you guys. I'll give you a little background on Common Core. Some of you may be knowledgeable about it, but I think it's worth setting the stage and making sure if we're going to understand what the new math is, what people refer to as the new math, we need to make sure we understand the background of Common Core. What are your students learning? So we're going to look at I have some videos and some things to help you guys as parents understand what your kids are learning in the classroom. And also I want to provide you with some resources at the end. I have 2 resources that you may or may not have heard of before. That I think will help you as parents as you support your child in the middle school grade classroom. Were there any parent-child conversations where the idea or the thoughts of the definition were exactly the same? No? Were they pretty much different? Yes? Okay. So again, I just wanted to set the stage. That's why we're here tonight, is so that we can all get on the same page about what the new math is, and making sure when we're on the same page, I think we can move forward in supporting our kids as they go through not only middle grades, but high school and being college and career ready. So what are Common Core state standards? It's essentially a set of academic standards that were for math and CLA. And it essentially gives the learning goals of what our students should be learning. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the legislation that has come out, but we will be switching from Common Core to North Carolina state standards for K-8 next school year. Okay? You'll be hearing more about that. When it comes to the North Carolina Standard Course of Study, or the standards that we'll be going to, there'll be about 80% of Common Core, 80% the same when it comes to that. So again, don't want to spend too much time on that, but did want to throw that out there. Again, the main thing I want you guys to understand is that Common Core is just a set of standards of what your child is learning in the classroom. It's just a set of standards, a set of goals. There's a few facts about Common Core state standards. Give you an opportunity to read that on your own. And I specifically want you to pay attention to that 4th bullet. while some aspects are new, many are not. So you think about yourself as a parent in your math classroom. I want you to flash back to your middle school days, which was just a few years ago, right? I want you to think about what you learned and how you learned in your classroom. You think there's probably a lot of memorization, probably a lot of doing what your teacher tells you to do. There was probably not a lot of conversation about why we were doing it, right? Okay? And probably the million-dollar question that a lot of kids still ask today is, when will I ever use this? Why do I need to know it? Right? Right? So, again, the standards are not intended to be a new name for old ways of business. They are a call to take the next step. So again, when it comes to the new math, this is not new in terms of new things that we're teaching your kids. The presentation, the delivery may be different, but the math that is involved is not different. It's the same math. It's just we're requiring our kids to have different problem-solving methods. We're allowing them to have multiple ways to solving their problems. Okay, as opposed to probably the one way that most of us were taught. This is how you do it, and if you don't use it, you'll lose it and forget it, right? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Matthew, I just came in, but I just heard something that's very important. A study's been made to what are some of the most difficult problems they had with the old way that can give them a better, clear understanding to now, because our numbers that went down in my school. Mm-hmm. So I would like to say, have you looked at the most major problems with Common Core that you face with students that we have now perfected or made a better way out?
That's a great question. And in my opinion, I believe that, if you look back to the other slide, Common Core has been around since 2010. So you think about, that's really not that long ago, right? And you think about the teachers who were teaching your kids, they were probably taught like us, right? They were taught procedures, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3. And really, there's been really no explanation of going deeper into why we're doing it so that kids can make connections to actually remember the material, right? So that's part of the department I'm in. I'm in the Teaching, Learning, and Professional Development department, and we work with teachers on how to teach conceptually, on how not to just, put the steps on the board and expect kids to solve equations, but why are they doing it? Why does this method work? So that's kind of what we're continuing to work with our teachers on. We're going into our schools and working with students and helping them kind of develop that conceptual understanding, which is taking some time.
Yes.
But I feel what you're saying on those terms. So we're continuing to look at that and looking at research around the standards, how to teach it. And again, I think it's a collective effort. So I appreciate you asking that question again tonight. Thank you. So I have a little video. This is a video that's going to take about 3 minutes, and its purpose is to explain a little bit about the math, the old way of teaching math, and the so-called new way of teaching math. Okay, I think it brings a little bit of comic relief.
So math in some ways is like baking, and math used to be taught as a recipe, as a series of steps you do, and then you get a result. And what you understand if you're a cook or a baker is that you add things in certain proportions for a reason. And that, your cake has to have this percentage of fats to this percentage of flour in order to work. And what Common Core tries to do is to do the same thing with math, sort of developing what they call number sense. And number sense is understanding more or less why we do the things we do. Common Core is taught in a way that most people over 20 don't recognize.
We find ourselves tearing out our hair at the new math.
It's the same thing I do when I get a check at a restaurant, draw a bunch of shapes and tell the waitress to find my error.
Parents taking to Twitter, posting unbelievably complicated homework assignments.
These math problems circulate that just seem really nonsensical, which is really frustrating if you have a kid who has this simple problem that looks like it's being made way too complex for no reason. It's totally understandable why people would say, this recipe that I learned is the quick and easy way to do it. Why aren't they just teaching kids to do that? So for example, we all learned to borrow when we subtracted, but this doesn't really show you what you're doing. It doesn't really show you what borrowing is. And so one of the ways the Common Core tries to explain this is with a number line. Because subtraction is really about finding the distance between two numbers. You start with the number you're subtracting, and you take little hops up to a more round number. So you go 10 between 90 and 100. So you've sort of broken down this distance, and you add these numbers together. There's another method called the counting up method, and this is also for subtraction. Count up from 38 to 40. Then from 40, you want to go up to the next big round number, which is 100. Then you need to go from 100 to 300, and then from 300 to 325. So that's the distance between 38 and 325, are these numbers that I've circled. You get this idea in your head that numbers are flexible things made up of other numbers. 40 is a 38 and a 2. The standard algorithm is the easy and quick way to do it. Students absolutely still have to learn to do it that way. But the idea is that this gives them a better understanding of what they're doing, and that there are a lot of ways to do this. There isn't just one right way to find the solution to a math problem. You read through the standards and they seem like really reasonable, good ideas. The most important thing is how they're taught. Teachers understanding what's expected of them, having the resources to teach it well, because otherwise you do end up with math problems that don't seem to make any sense at all. And in some cases, that's just the parents not understanding it. But in some cases, it probably is a bad lesson plan, a bad textbook, a teacher who doesn't quite understand what they're supposed to do differently now. There are definitely bumps in the road.
How many of you, did that video resonate with some of you? Yes, right? Any thoughts? Anybody want to share out any thoughts on, what you're going through now and maybe how it relates to what's going on now at your house?
I feel like the new math is complicated for parents to understand.
Can I actually start over?
Okay. I just feel like the new math is more complicated for us parents because there are so many more steps than what we learned. So it seems harder than when we were actually solving the problems.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm a big mouth. I can talk about
You
it.
good? Okay.
When they started the Common Core, did they have a class like a presentation like this in that time? Because I feel like because of the fact that when they started it, like the parents were alerted of it, and if we could have had something like this to prepare us, like the teachers,
Right.
because I'm like, okay, the teachers had the training, so why didn't we have the training?
Right.
And it's like when they did it, it's just like the parents were just thrown in it, and then I had to show her how to do it. And I'm
Right.
like, well, how am I going to do that? And then when she comes home, she really can't explain it because she's so frustrated with. She don't even now. She's in middle school and we're
Right.
still struggling with it.
Right. That's a great question. That's a great concern. And that's, you're right. Wish there were more of these around earlier so that we can, we can learn with our children.
Right.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. How do you help students that are struggling in math to get with the new math? Because I can show my son one way to do it, but when he goes to school, it's taught differently.
Right.
We as parents don't know the new math, so if we I can teach him how to get the same answer, but on a test, the teachers are saying it's wrong because he's not showing his work.
Gotcha. And I'm going to get to that in my presentation, some specific slides to help you guys as parents to bridge that gap.
I don't want to bridge the gap. I want to know, how do you take a kid that struggles in math and comes home and expects us to help him when he goes back to school and he's still learning it a completely different way?
Right. The one thing I'll say first is that the one way that you're teaching him, he is learning. The standard algorithm, they're still teaching that in middle school. The only difference is kids are expected to know multiple ways to solve the same problem based on the information that they're given. I think that's where the disconnect comes, is where, yes, in math, we come to a right answer. There is a right or wrong answer. But in terms of the methods that your kids are required to show that they understand, they're required to show multiple ways of working that same problem. And that's what the information in the standards, they'll actually tell you. The student has to represent it visually. They have to use the algorithm. There's certain standards that the teachers have to make sure the kids are proficient at in order to master the standards. So we will get to that. Another thing I would challenge you with, and this may ruffle some feathers, but I wouldn't expect you as a parent to know all about math to help your child. Sometimes I think parents are pressured to feel like I have to know everything to help my child, and it just becomes a frustration at the dinner table where you don't get anywhere at the end of the night, because again, your way is what you know, and the kid is coming home saying, well, my teacher has taught me these other ways that I have to know, and by the end of the night, nobody's helped, right? So I want to, if you don't leave here with anything else, I want to help you guys understand that it's not necessarily the expectation for you to know everything to help your child out. I'm going to give you some resources. I'm going to give you some things that you can use to help yourself, to help your child, to communicate with the teachers of your child, so that we can improve the mastery of it for your child, if that makes sense. Can I go ahead?
I'm a retired elementary teacher. I went through all this when it got introduced. And one of the things we realized is the reason those other countries are doing better than our kids is they've been using this for years.
For years.
Singapore math is based on these principles.
I agree.
So the United States is basically catching up with
Right.
these other countries.
Right. So would you agree that it's going to take, it takes some time? And again, I think with our culture, being a microwave culture, we want things instantly, right? And, this is something that is going to take some time. But again, I understand where you guys are coming from as parents. It shouldn't be at the expense of your child crying and the expense of your child feeling that they're not good at math. I totally understand that. I'll take one more comment from this young lady, and then we're going to move on.
My biggest concern really is about the fact that testing then becomes into play. Because even though you have taught all these different strategies, when children are under the gun and in testing, they're looking for the fastest way, I think, when we put the clock on them to get the math done.
Right.
And I've seen kids go through the long step, and then those children run out of time,
Right.
and then they are frustrated again.
Right.
So I don't understand what the balance is of teaching all of the strategies, but yet when it comes to the testing piece, and we want to say, we want to make sure you know how to do those strategies, but we're not going to give you enough time to do that.
Gotcha.
So I think that there needs to be like this balance happening between the testing world and, what
I think that's a
happens.
great concern. I think that's why we teach multiple strategies, because depending on your time, depending on the problem, hopefully by the end of the year, your child has a bag of options that they can choose from. This analogy may not make sense, but I'm gonna throw it out there. You guys know where Friendly Center is? Okay, raise your hand if you would take a plane or a train to go to the Friendly Center. Why not?
If you had a train here, I would.
You would. But in general, why would you take a plane to get to the Friendly Center? It's too close, right? Now, if I said, would you take a plane or a train to fly to California? Would you rather do that as opposed to driving a car like you would the Friendly Center? So you have different options of travel based on where you're going, right? So I think we can talk about how Common Core is in the new math in terms of the multiple strategies that kids are given. Depending on what they're asked, depending on what they have to do, they have multiple options, multiple modes of getting to that final answer based on what they've learned. So
You don't want to go there, right? You don't let that be the last answer?
yeah,
Okay.
we got to move on. We got to move on. So here's an example, and this is a middle school grades example. On the left, we have a previous math question. And previous math question just means under the old standards, how most of the adults and the parents here were taught. Now, after reading this question, this essentially only requires the use of simple arithmetic. It makes sense to you, right? But on the right side, this is similar question, but it's a Common Core math question. This question requires the use of an algebraic equation. Can anybody point out some differences between the two? Although they look somewhat similar. Go ahead.
Well, on the previous question, it shows how much the money. Well, on the previous math question, it shows how much money does she make, and on the Common Core math question, it shows how much apples does she buy. So it just kind of switches up.
Right. Exactly. Would you guys agree with that? Right. It's going to take a different process, right? It's not just, you want to speak on that?
No.
It's going to take a different process, just like you said. Do you think these two math problems are totally different?
Yes.
Yes.
Totally different.
Yes. Yes.
You think they're totally different? The way it's worded, concept is still the same. Okay, that's your opinion. Okay. Anyone think that they? So you say, who thinks they're totally different? Totally different, sir. You want to speak on that?
No, I just my thinking is they're different because you're not coming. The answer isn't the same for both because one gives you the answer.
Right.
I mean, there's some common things. They're both apples and they're both numbers, but I don't see them as that similar.
Critical thinking, right? It takes some critical. Which one do you think takes more critical thinking?
CCSS.
CCSS math.
Right.
So I was gonna say, one is straight thinking, the other one is like life. You have to go around about way, but it's more critical thinking.
Gotcha.
How do you arrive to something?
Gotcha.
So you eat, but you're learning how to eat in many different ways.
Gotcha. That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. Here's another question I want to show you. Give you an opportunity to look those over. Thoughts?
The first one over there, previous math question, that one looks and is much simpler, like the way they did it, than the other one, which is much longer, obviously, but still, it's much simpler the other way.
Any other?
Different processes in order to reach the final answer. You know, it's not just one clear-cut way to get there.
So I guess my next question is, it can make it challenging, although we're seeing some similarities. I think what's coming out is we see that with the Common Core, it takes higher level thinking skills in order to be successful. Would you say so? Any other thoughts? All right, can I show you one more video and then we're going to use the rest of our time. I'm going to talk about resources, answer some questions for you. Is that fair? Okay. So what I want to do first is talk to you about 2 resources, okay, that you can write down that I believe, if you've never heard of them, I believe they will help you. The first one is bealearninghero.org. It has videos, it has practical information that you can go on and look at as a parent that will help you navigate not only the standards, but also help you navigate how to help your child with the homework that they come home with. And again, it does a good job of helping you navigate the work of your student, but not necessarily putting you in the position to have to teach your student. So that's a great website that I encourage you to go to. Another aspect I like about it is it has questions. It talks about how to engage in a parent-teacher conference with your child with your child's teacher surrounding the math that they're learning. So it's a great resource that will help you, and I believe to empower you as parents in understanding what your child is learning and how to communicate surrounding the information that they're learning. So again, bealearninghero.org. Has anyone heard of that website before? Anybody used it? Anybody can testify to that? Okay. So I encourage you, go home tonight, look at it. I think you'll find a lot of great nuggets there. Next one is greatschools.org. What do I need to know as a parent? What do I need to know as a parent? So, Common Core standards say what we want students to learn. Those are the goals, like I said earlier before. Your child will be able to explain the math, not just do the math. Okay, so again, I think that's what we've been talking about. Being able to think, have higher thinking skills, and explaining the math, not just doing it. And understand that the math problems you remember are still important. And I think we looked at that with looking at the previous math problem and the Common Core math problem, that there are some similarities, right? I think most of us agree that there are some similarities. So knowing that you as a parent, the way that you were taught is still important for you helping your child. So how to help at home. How to help at home. The first thing I would suggest, if you haven't already, is to develop a relationship with your child's math teacher. And that's via phone call, via email. Again, going past just letting the teacher know that you care, which is important. But I would venture to say that most math teachers, if you stepped out there to ask them, I'm trying to help my child at home. Is there anything that you can give me as a supplement, or maybe sending me a weekly update when we're about to start a unit on what the unit covers before the kids get started? Something like that will help to develop that relationship with your child's math teacher. Yes, ma'am.
And also some schools, the math teacher can tell you about in-school tutoring. That's what happened with me when I just sent an email saying that my child was having some issues. And I didn't even know they were having high school students come in.
Yes.
A couple times a week.
Right.
And having people close to her age was a huge help.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And again, me being a former math teacher, I actually had tutorials before school and after school. So again, it's a matter of, like you said, just reaching out to the teacher and figuring out, what days are your tutorials, when are your tutoring opportunities. That's a big step right there. Just to break out a deck of cards. Okay, so using card games helps out at home. With math fluency, multiplication facts. I work with high school teachers, and to this day, if you ask them what students come in deficient at and what they would hope that students would be better at, is knowing their multiplication tables, knowing their multiplication facts, being able to add and subtract small numbers. So breaking out the deck of cards, using those card games will help with that fluency. Have your child explain how they solve the word problem. You know, father in the back, you said, you know, I explained one way to my kid, and you know, my kid is struggling. Maybe have them start to explain what they know about the word problems that they're working with. And if they can't explain it to you, that's where again you can reach out to your child's math teacher. You know, shoot them an email, let them know, my child is not understanding the math. What can I do to help support you in the classroom? Is there a video that you can send me, or notes that you can send me, or resources that you can send me to help my child as they're here at home? Connect and network with other parents. I think, you know, this is the perfect opportunity. Guilford Parent Academy was gracious enough to put on this event. I would encourage you, before you leave, connect and network with another parent, especially parents from other schools. Again, I think the more we unite together with this issue that most households experience, the better. The more empowered you feel that you're not alone in this issue. And use the resources that are available. Use the resources that are available. Does anybody have any questions or need me to necessarily elaborate on any of those bullets? Yes, sir.
Is anything happening with the county to alleviate the class sizes? I mean, it's hard with a new math class, a new math curriculum, we're actually in one of the pilot schools with the math program, but there's 36 kids in this math class.
Gotcha. To be honest with you, we are doing something about it. My department doesn't necessarily deal with lowering those class sizes, so I can't necessarily sit here and tell you how that's being done. But that is definitely a concern. I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, the staff, his math teacher is incredible, and he's had great math teachers all along. So you're doing something right, and I do appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
When the teachers send home the information, lots of times it's still in teacher ease, or they just send home a copy of the standard.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know any more than what you didn't know.
Gotcha.
You know, so they have to make sure that they're communicating the math, even in a way that I can understand it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Don't just send home a copy of the standards, because I can go online and get that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think a suggestion would be maybe to reach out to that teacher. And again, I would suggest before the unit starts, or you know, if your kid knows that they have a test, it's a pretty good opportunity that they're about to start a new unit that same week or the next day. So I would encourage you to send maybe a specific email to that teacher and say, can you send me an overview or an outline of the unit that has the standards in it, so you can kind of get ahead of what they're learning. You can go on some of these sites and look up the standards, like you said, you already have access to that, but that can give you a little more information on what my kid is learning and how I can help. Yes, ma'am.
I know this is a long time. Our son, usually he has good grades all year, then when he does the integrated testing, suddenly it's a problem. He said that he feels like all year long, it's like they're not teaching me what they're testing me on now. They didn't teach it this way, and then they give it to me, and I'm just wrong sometimes. Also, I guess it's class sizes that make it so difficult, because I was told, well, he's got good grades when he's in the conference, seriously. And he's in middle school.
Right.
And so I'm always having a problem actually getting a conference, and I know, I can just only imagine, it's a lot of pressure on teachers.
Right.
So having to bring us up to speed, and that can get to be passionate, but I'm just saying that is a problem with us out there about other people.
Right.
But no, my son does have good grades, it's a struggle for him, but he's a big advocate for himself.
That's good. That's
which
awesome.
is what I
That's
always
good.
told him, that
That's
you
good.
can have to, I can't get to them.
That's good.
And sending a lot of stuff home to me that kids don't understand, it's like you're telling me to do it.
Right.
What did you do all that?
Understood.
And you know, I can't get to life.
Right.
And doing the things I need to do with them because it's so much homework. So, I mean, if this is what I do, this is a tool somebody.
Right.
Tell my son, look, we gonna write a load of years, we gonna we need some help with it. So they know it's not that I'm not doing my homework. just that, you know, that was my way to communicate with her.
That's awesome. That's good. And I would encourage you to continue that throughout the school year.
This lady was here. She was here at first. I'm going to.
Okay, sorry.
I was going to say that I believe that one barrier to learning math is a fear factor. That the parent is nervous about it because of the way we were taught. Then that comes across because the children, if the children are fearful, that's going to be a barrier because they believe they can't do it.
Right.
So I believe that it would be helpful if they can connect the learning to something they already know. For instance, if the parent uses a recipe to cook, there are some fractions there.
Right.
There's math and everything. So if the person is sewing or if the fractions there, there's math and everything. So to connect it to cutting the pizza or cutting a pie or the number of red M&Ms to chocolate ones in the package, just whatever it is they can relate to and get a visual, because they do use manipulatives in school.
Right.
And all levels there are manipulatives. And I'm a food person, so I will think about when I cut that cake to be served, I am dividing it. So they are not only learning multiplication or division, they are also learning fractions. And it's not everything, but at least they will have the concept of this is what I do. So if I take out one slice of the cake that I've cut into 16 pieces, I know that this is 1/16 because there's 16 pieces. I really do believe that. And if there's a student in the band who says, well, I'm not good at fractions. Well, yes, you are, because I don't hear you starting before everybody else and stopping when everybody else is finished. So you're using fractions all the time. Or the person who's good at sports, that the ball is going in the basket because that student has learned something. They don't think like that, but they have learned how to make it go that distance and how to make it arc so that it goes there, so that they hit the target. So I think if they can relate it to something they already enjoy, that will alleviate part of the fear factor. And to pace themselves, not to just get stuck and stop on one thing and run out of time.
Right.
The way I heard here, they don't have enough time to, don't spend all of that time on one. Mark it, lightly darken the answer. It's going to be multiple choice. It'll be, if it's scanned, it's going to be some kind of bubble sheet, so that they won't have to worry about that one and go on and do what they do know and then come back to them. Those are some tips that I know work.
Agreed. I 100% agree. Thank you for sharing that. I think we are out of time.
Yes.
I did have a slide with my contact information on it. So I know some of you weren't able to, just because of time's sake, you have some questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll try to get back with you ASAP.
All right, can we give Mr. Grant a hand?